All right, I see it's 4:00, so I'm going to call the May 10th, 2021 Select Board meeting to order and remind everyone that this meeting is occurring via Zoom and is being recorded. So will the clerk please call the attendance?
Ms. Escobedo.
Present?
Mr. Johnson.
Present.
Ms. Hotchkiss.
Present.
And Ms. Ackerman.
Present.
And myself, Ms. Bates, present.
Okay, and the entire select board is here. Thank you. The consent agenda reads as follows: minutes to approve for April 5th, 2021, April 12th, 2021, and the April 12th, 21 executive session not to be released.
Move to approve the consent agenda. Oh, sorry.
That's fine. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo.
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman.
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous, and the chair so declares. The town manager's report.
Hi, good evening, everyone. You have the printed report in the packet. Just a couple of quick hitters, and I've got some stuff that was not in the printed report that is more late breaking. You saw in the vaccine update, the governor did make the announcement last week about closing some of the mass vaccination sites in favor of looking more towards a regional approach, working with local boards of health. We still have an application pending with the state, with 8 other communities. And so we are waiting to see if that gets approved and what that would mean. And so I don't really have anything further on that other than knowing that most of you saw the announcement and probably are wondering what that means for us. Still waiting to see. Just a quick note, there was a kind of a neat program the Concord Police Department did, a bike safety rodeo. They work with our local cycling community on programs related to safe walking and biking to school. So, even though we've talked many times at the Transportation Advisory Committee and elsewhere, the challenges for incorporating walking and biking on some of our narrow streets, the town generally and the police department specifically are working to try and, at least from a programmatic standpoint, kind of try and do our part to contribute to that effort. Similarly, there's a memo that I attached from Marsha Rasmussen, which is basically an update on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail project and some things that are happening there. We did also include a bit of good news about our PFAS testing. It seems that the initial results are favorable or not as bad as they could be, I guess. And if they're not as bad as they could be, then as we talked about when Alan was here, that is favorable. So we don't think the test results aren't going to trigger kind of an emergency order of any kind or need to distribute, like, for example, bottled water to vulnerable populations. There are some exceedances that may trigger a notification requirement, but from a community standpoint, the exceedances are very low. So this is positive news, but as we note, and as Alan would tell you, this is just the first chapter of this, what we expect to be a pretty long story. So we will keep monitoring and provide updates as needed. A couple of neat things from DPLM. Some of the benches were given a facelift by Michael Sprague, who kind of refinished them, and they turned out really nice. And then we're looking for volunteers to participate in the garlic mustard poll that's happening. People should contact the Natural Resources Division within DPLM if they're interested in participating. And then just a quick note, the fire department, I think I don't always include fire department updates, but 81 calls for service. That's a pretty standard. In fact, maybe even a little low. So it's a very busy department. I don't always highlight that, but it's a busy department with a wide range of responsibilities, from doing fire safety to inspections of things, including underground storage tank, to many EMS calls and fire drills and things like that. So I just want to give some acknowledgement to the fire department. And then very quickly, a couple of other items that have broken later. So we did the Concord Free Public Library has now announced their reopening plan. They'll be reopening for in-person browsing starting on Wednesday, May 19th at 10 a.m. You should check the website for hours, but basically it's 10 to 6 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then they'll have some expanded hours 10 to 8 on Thursday. Fowler branch is 10 to 6 Monday through Friday, but they are closed from 1 to 2 for cleaning. And then curbside will end at 6 p.m. on the 14th, on Monday the 14th. That'll give the circulation staff and some others time to kind of get reorganized and put back together to make sure they're ready for the in-person browsing on the 19th. And then there may be some limited curbside available on 17th and 18th by a request for people who just may not feel comfortable just yet going back in. And then, but that's really limited due to staffing. So there are safety guidelines that will be in place, and there are spaces that will be available. Most of the library will be available, but there are a few places that won't be available for safety concerns and just the availability of staff to monitor those places. I know people have asked about residents have asked about weekend hours. We are working our way towards that. Like I said, we have a number of vacancies that we're filling, and hopefully in the very near future, we'll be able to add some Saturday hours. That's our kind of next wave for library reopening. And then we did get as promised, the guidance, the Treasury Department guidance on the American Recovery Plan Act, the ARPA funds, came out earlier today. The rule is about 150 pages, and I, like others, are kind of going through it. We did get one summary that's kind of generic, but I'm sure we'll get a more detailed analysis from the Massachusetts Municipal Association in the very near future, and I'll circulate that as soon as I have it. But that'll, I think it seems, first read seems they have really made it as flexible and as as applicable to as many COVID-19 related things, not just from a public health standpoint, but from an economic standpoint as possible. So that's a good thing. And then last but certainly not least, we did receive a notification from Moody's that our AAA bond rating was affirmed. AAA bond rating with stable outlook was affirmed. We did have our rating call last week and had a good discussion with the analyst who prepared that report. And really, I think we've had AAA bond rating for a while, but I think it's not guaranteed. It's not something that once you have it for life. And Kerry LaFleur and her team did an excellent job preparing for the call and kind of talking through a lot of the issues that Moody's likes to look at. And then we were also able to talk through some of the bigger picture policy items specifically related to, municipal vulnerability, climate preparedness. We've done a lot of work in that space recently, and so we were able to kind of highlight that. And so we're very pleased with this outcome. And that's it for me.
Okay, questions for the town manager. Jane.
I did have a question because it was in the discussion of and congratulations to Carrie and her entire team, and congratulations to the town on receiving a AAA bond rating, especially in this of all times. Obviously, that should put everybody in town, their minds to somewhat greater ease that despite the challenges, our town is well financially taken care of. I did have a question in the description I read because it seemed like there was a contradiction, and I don't mean that it was intended that way. It was confusing to me, and that was that the seemingly. I'm pausing right now because I'm trying to get the document right in front of me so I can quote it directly.
Is this the Moody's document?
The Moody's, in other words, the contradiction between voter support for large capital projects and concern about budgetary spending.
Yeah. So one of the things that they do in this, if you go back to last year's version of this, it said the same. It said almost the exact same things. And what they do is they basically identify kind of pros and cons.
Mhm.
And so what they call this factors that could lead to an upgrade, which we're proud to say is not applicable because there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere higher than AAA. And that's as factors that could lead to a downgrade of the rating. And that is decline in general fund reserves and liquidity, and this is from the press release I'm reading, not from the analysis. The press release kind of says it a little more succinctly. Lack of voter support for large operating capital needs, and material increases in debt burden.
Right.
They identify those. I think if they were, they're tracking, our discussion about the middle school project, and they do analyze our approach to fiscal management. Mm-hmm. And I think if they sensed that there was, trouble in the air, then I think the stable outlook would be the place where you would see that, those concerns would be manifested first. I just think that, yes, we are talking about $100 million project that will have a significant increase, a material increase in our debt, but there's also going to be a material decrease in our debt in the coming years because of the other projects that are going to have debt retired. And so,
and I guess I saw this as a sort of the glass half full, i.e. they want to see the fact that we are not shying, that the voting public is not shying away from needed capital projects.
Yes, I think that's right. I think that those are things that could, right. This could be bad for you, but because we don't see that, we think you're a stable outlook. I think.
Well, yeah, that we're not spending like drunken sailors either. It's you got to do both, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, if we didn't bond for big projects, then Moody's wouldn't have work to do. So it's not just the very fact that we're bonding. So I think it's more, it's cautionary stuff they have to put in there just because if something bad happened and we lost our stable outlook, we'd be like, why didn't you tell us? But I agree with you, Jane and Matt. They are things that are things to look out for, but I think that they are, in the context of Concord, things that we're very conscientious about.
It's boilerplate.
Yep. Any other comments or questions for the town manager? Thank you for ending on that good news. And I'll move on to the chair's report. I just want to call everyone's attention to two recently recorded presentations, one of which was on cybersecurity and the 2019 breach. And the second one being, which was presented by the town manager and Jason Bulger at a recent meeting of the Concord Carlisle League of Women Voters, and is recorded and available to the public. The second recent recorded item was related to the open meeting law, and I encourage everyone to look at that as well. That featured Carrie Coyne, who is the Carrie Kilcoyne, who is the Assistant Attorney General, and discussed a lot of specific questions related to the open meeting law. That was sponsored by the league, and they have indicated will be made available to the public. So I encourage particularly our chairs and committee members to tune into that if you can. Last week, the select board did send a letter to the middle school building committee, one applauding them for all the work that they're doing and all the tough decisions that they're dealing with. Also encouraging them with a recommendation to target as much as possible, as closely as possible, $100 million building project. With the understanding also that they can listen to the significant community feedback that has come in from a number of citizens regarding the space plan that had been presented. That that letter also encouraged the committee members to seek compromise and accommodation at this point, particularly in the conversation as they need to move into the schematic design phase. So there will be an additional middle school building committee discussion this week. And hopefully they'll now be able to move on to making a decision about how they're going to proceed to the schematic design stage. And then the last thing I'll remind everybody is that there is an additional public hearing this Thursday at 7 o'clock for the planning board, and that should complete the series of public hearings in preparation for the annual town meeting. And that concludes my report. Yep. Jane.
Just a quick question. Do you have any highlights from the open meeting law presentation, Linda, to share? Just, one or two bullet points that struck you from the league's or from the Assistant Attorney General's presentation?
Yeah. Thank you. I think the first thing that struck me, and it always does when I revisit any open meeting law presentation given by any group, is that when you think you know the basic tenets of the open meeting law, that is not sufficient. There are many nuances, and there are over 1,000 findings on these various nuances that are available on the Attorney General's website related to the open meeting law. So I think that's my biggest takeaway. I think the second point I would make in terms of this presentation is, in terms of how it struck me, is that there were very specific questions related to committees processing their minutes, committees interaction with the public and taking public comment or not. And I'm sure there's other things that I've since gone on to a lot of other items, but those remain uppermost on my mind.
It was not a trick question. I was just curious as to what your takeaways were.
Yeah, it's all right. And there were a lot of good questions asked by the audience in that presentation, which in and of themselves are always illustrative, I think, for people. Okay. Terry, I think I saw your hand next. Did you want to comment further?
Right. I have 2 comments. First of all, thank you, Linda, for sending that letter to the middle school building committee. It was an excellent letter, really well written. And the other thing I just wanted to comment, there are, you may have forgotten, but just for the public, there are 2 public hearings this week. These are the last 2. Tuesday night is the Enterprise Funds Finance Committee, and then Thursday night, the Planning Board. So I just want to remind you.
That's an important correction, and I thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Susan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention with regard to the open meeting law session, there is a lot of material in there. And what struck me, and Henry noticed it as well, is that this legislation was passed by the state legislature, who, interestingly, has to follow none of these rules. Just pointing it out.
That always is an interesting point. All right.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. With us today is a team from the Library Corporation and the library, and I believe Jeff Adams is going to introduce this team and all the good work that they've done. And we're certainly thrilled that you've been looking at this issue of sustainability and leadership in this area. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I'm actually going to let Library Corporation President Sherry Litwack begin.
All right. Thank you. Sherry, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, thank you for meeting with us today and for reviewing the draft of the Concord Free Public Library Sustainability Plan. This plan is a 10-year roadmap to carbon neutrality and sustainability for the Concord Free Public Library Corporation and its partners. We're building on the commitment of the library to meet the needs of today and future generations through stewardship of its historic property and information sharing. Slide 2, the members. The members of the Sustainability Committee represent diverse constituencies in Concord and have been supported by Greener U, and you'll be hearing more from them, a sustainability consultant to institutions and communities. As you look at
Sherry,
Yes.
Sherry, excuse me for interrupting you. Well, were you expecting that we would see these slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you need to, let's see, Jeremy, could you work with Sherry to set this up?
Sure, Sherry. If you prefer, you can share your screen, or if you'd like me to do it, I can go ahead and do
Okay,
that.
so that will either be Bridget who will be sharing the screen, I believe, from Greener U.
Or
Bridget,
Jeremy, you have the slides. You could do it as well.
Whichever you prefer. Bridget, would you like to do it, or I can go ahead and do it?
I have them launched. I can show them, Jeremy. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Okay, so, okay, then now we're caught up. And this is really just to introduce our Sustainability Committee. As I think you'll recognize a lot of names because represents people from the community. And just to highlight a few, Elise Woodward is the chair of the committee. Unfortunately, she's out of town, so wasn't able to join us today. And of course, Jeff Adams, trustee of the library, and also chair of our building committee. You'll see Lindsay Howard, who is a liaison to the library committee, very important. There's also a staff member and the development director. Very importantly, Kate Hanley, who's the Town of Concord's Director of Sustainability. Alice Kaufman, of course, former select board person and member of the Concord Municipal Light Board. And very excitingly, we have Maggie Bowers, who is a student at CCHS, and she's really made significant contributions to the process. So, we think we have a great group, and they've done some really good work, which you're going to hear about now.
Thank you, Sherry. Unfortunately, Elise couldn't be with us today, but we offer great thanks for her leadership and guidance through this process. Our goal today is to provide a synopsis of the sustainability planning process and its outcomes, and receive feedback from the Select Board and to address any questions that you may have. Next slide. The overall goals of this effort have been to create an actionable 5-year implementation plan within a 10-year vision, and to align this plan with the town's Sustainable Concord Plan and the library's long-range planning, and to increase awareness through community engagement. Next slide. Since August in 2020, many local groups and partners have offered ideas and support during 14 listening sessions with diverse stakeholder groups and community reviews of the draft plan, as this timeline shows. The final edits are underway now, and today we seek input from the Select Board. Next slide, please. As we consider the outcomes of a plan, it's important. We can actually go back one. That's okay. As we consider the outcomes of the plan, it's important to emphasize that partnerships will be key to the successful implementation of this plan, along with community support and engagement. The Concord Free Public Library Corporation, library director and staff, and the town's sustainability department will play active roles in its implementation. And I should note that Kate Hanley, the Town of Concord Sustainability Director, is a member of this committee and has provided a wealth of information and guidance. Next slide, please. The vision emphasizes the library's commitment to its operations in a sustainable future, as well as its role in educating, inspiring, and supporting the community in sustainable practice, and the timeline aligns with the town's sustainability goals. Next slide. The plan's 8 goals, each with 3 strategies, fall into 2 primary focus areas: outreach and education, and built environment and operations, with implementation actions for each. Outreach and education focuses on the buildings as a living laboratory, a repository of educational resources and sustainability programming and climate action leadership. Next slide. The built environment and operation goals are specific to the library buildings on both campuses and include resilient landscapes and grounds, materials and zero waste principles, and mobility. All components of the plan were informed by community member input and confirmed by the Sustainability Committee. So simply put, next slide, please. The Concord Free Public Library Corporation is committed to leading in sustainability and climate action in the town of Concord. This sustainability plan will provide resources and support to all members of the community. And because the success of this plan will require the partnership of the library, the corporation, and the town, we request your endorsement. Now we'd like to take any and all questions and specifically address what you like about this plan, what seems to be missing, and any clarifications that you would recommend be included. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions from the select board? Well, I'll start by saying thank you for doing all this work. And, I think the library is, in fact, in a very key position to provide leadership, not only for educating the public, but also, demonstration of inclusion of these principles in both building operations and maintenance. So that leads to a couple questions I had. And one is, Sherry, I think you opened with a reference to it's a 10-year plan. And I did see that referenced in one paragraph in the report. But the title of the report and all of the goals speak to 5 years. So, one recommendation I might have is that if this 5-year plan is part of a larger 10-year vision, maybe some more needs to be said about that in your narrative. And then the other question I might ask is that has, and I'm sure there was some discussion about this, but is there some initial thinking that the committee has at this point in terms of how the plan will be financed for the town? The various aspects of the plan going forward might be financed.
Okay. Sherry, I'll offer some quick feedback, maybe starting with a second question. Thanks, Linda. We have not detailed the entire costs of the plan, but as you know, the Library Corporation is responsible for investment into the buildings. So any capital projects that would be part of this plan, such as changing the equipment in the buildings to all electric, supported by Concord Municipal Light Green Power, would be borne by the corporation. There are other programming opportunities where various groups within the library might participate in the town as well. But the next step is to form an implementation plan. And regarding the 5-year and 10-year plan, the 10-year big picture goal is carbon neutrality by 2030. The focus of this plan is what it will take us to get there over the next 5 years. And that's really the focus, the steps in the next 5 years, and then we'll rewrite the next steps to get to the 10-year plan. And we will be forming an implementation group that will have annual assessments of our progress.
Right. And I might just add to that, Jeff, that the idea of the 10 years is an aspirational vision of, where we see ourselves being in 2030. But obviously we can look at 5 years much more easily in terms of actions that we can start taking now and over the next 5 years. And then we'll be able to figure out, what the next 5 years action plan will be. So
capturing that, just what you said somewhere, might be helpful to add, because I think that's terrific.
Idea.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Jane.
Actually, I think Susan has had her hand up longer than I have.
Okay. Susan.
Thank you. Thank you all on the library committee, building committee for doing this extensive work and creating the sustainability plan. the piece that seems to me to be missing is the fact that you're in the middle of, I guess, or somewhere in the process of a $10+ million project. And the only reference here, there's a reference on its renewable energy production on site section. It says there was an assessment determined that while ground source system would be feasible from a technical standpoint, there would be minimal financial or sustainability related benefits when compared to full electric. And this is where I'm puzzled, because it sounds like maybe you didn't consider the ground source before you built it all for electric. And all we've been hearing a lot about in the past several months, heat pumps. There's heat pump coaches, that the upfront cost may be more, but that the operating cost is much less. And that's what concerns me, because the operating cost, I'm assuming, of an all-electric is going to be more than it would be with the heat pump, and the town is responsible for the operating costs. So I'm wondering how the heat pump source was just not incorporated into the building.
So thank you, Susan. That's a great question, and I think requires more clarification. We are using electric heat pumps. You're referring to the alternative of ground source electric heat pumps, and the capital expense of using ground source water from wells far exceeded high quality heat pumps that are being installed in the addition. So we are embracing that technology and assuming that Concord Light's moving towards green power in the future. So the costs are slightly more expensive for that type of equipment. The capital expense was borne by the corporation, but the energy efficiency of the new building far exceeds the stretch code. It's a system that's been applauded by a number of folks who have reviewed the project in more detail.
Thank you.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, all of you who've been involved in producing this this plan. And I know that Sherry and Jeff had a lot to do with it, and as did Kate. But I also suspect that the entire committee has their fingerprints on many of the words, and then words that are not obviously embedded in slides. Couple questions. Getting to the 5-year versus 10-year plan, since the out 5 years is about a lot of implementation pieces, or about some of the, as I think Sherry said, the aspirational goal achievements. It would be interesting to have a paragraph or two articulating a regular review periods, because, for instance, as I know that Jeff as in his business knows, solar roofing materials are changing dramatically. And while solar in such a visible space on a roof in the middle of Concord's historic district might not be anybody's cup of, might not pass muster, there are many other forms of solar materials that are starting to come through. Likewise, solar side. I mean, there are lots of other pieces, and even those that might be a little more cutting edge. Again, I think you've really caught the living lab aspects and opportunities. So I think it's really important to think of, it's not a museum, but it's a teaching facility. And so capturing all of the opportunities that are present today, as well as in the future, to update the ways you teach about sustainability. And I would, because I always think about, this is the goal, so how do we fund it? I also suspect that having, that working closely with Kate and perhaps assigning this to, I don't know whether it's a board member or who, but to develop a grant seeking piece of this, because capturing the model, it will both keep the model refreshing because it's an incentive, but there's a lot of opportunity out there to attract funds that maybe a town as well off as Concord might not get on one level, but as a model, we could get, because we are making, we're making inroads in places before perhaps they'd be available to all.
Thank you. Boy, you're right on, Jane, on a lot of that. And solar is absolutely not off the table. On day one, it doesn't seem to be as practical as we think it might be in a few years, between different credit opportunities and the cost of solar coming down all the time. And Kate's very much on top of grant opportunities. So we absolutely assume that's a potential partner for us down the road.
Right. And another point along those lines is that was another reason why we had 5 years of actionable steps as opposed to 10, because as you say, Jane, the technology is changing so rapidly. We can't even imagine what's going to happen, even probably in 2 years, some of the opportunities. So we didn't want to say, well, this is exactly what we're going to do for 10 years when we just have to be open to all the new opportunities and possibilities. Yep.
Right.
Hey, Terry.
I just wanted to comment that this plan is very well thought out and very comprehensive. I was at one of the listening sessions, so I didn't realize there were 14 listening sessions, and there's a great deal of work that's gone into this, and really excellent job by everyone. I look forward to seeing the implementation committee and implementation plan.
Thanks, Terry.
Yep. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Smith.
So I just wanted to note, as a former member of the planning board who was involved in, reviewing the site plan for the new addition, I just wanted to commend the Library Corporation and the committee about just the progress that's been made here. That I think the questions were raised about sustainability when that design was proposed, and I think that there's really been strides made, and that both the responsibility and opportunity of being a leader in this area has been realized. So, I look forward, as Terry does, to the implementation here. But it's great to see this, and we need to be a beacon for these kinds of efforts, throughout.
Thank you, Matt.
After that, the important comments about the leadership, this is more of a detailed question, but let me just share with you that, as I read the section about the living lab, which is wonderful, given the definition of the space that you have available to work in, I guess I just had a question about, and it's wonderful to see the reference to the gardens and the pollinator gardens and so forth, but the balance between the safety of the children and having some of these demonstration gardens available to them that illustrate some of these things, I think is going to need to be met within a contained space. And I'm sure, you've already considered that, and your landscapers will as well. But it was exciting to see that as a component of your project. So
thank you, Linda.
Hey, Linda.
Yes.
I was about to kind of build on that point. I think just to say, to thank the corporation for their presentation, but also to note that there are, and I would invite Kate Henley to weigh in as well. I think there are places where, as we get through the 5 and then 10 years, there are, where the climate, where the sustainability plan and kind of library operations will intersect. And I think it's been a very open discussion with the corporation and the committee. And I think, the programming opportunities that are presented in this plan, I see as an enhancement to our library offerings, not something that we're going to have to take on as an additional task. I think it really fits in line with the priorities of the community, generally, library patrons more specifically. And I think where library programming is naturally, trending towards anyway. So I think it's really from my perspective, it's really a great opportunity for the operations as well.
Yeah, and I think it's been really great to be on this committee because the library is taking such leadership on implementing a lot of what is in our sustainable Concord plan that we released last summer. And it's really great to see this plan align and kind of bring to life some of the community-wide goals we have for sustainability. And I think, it's been touched on, this idea of the library being an opportunity for a living laboratory and an opportunity to share outreach and education with the community. It's a place the community goes. And there's just really, the sky's the limit there in terms of programming. And it was almost hard to figure out, how do we even prioritize what we're going to do, because there's just so much opportunity there. So I really think it's a great collaboration, and it's been a pleasure to work with the library on developing this plan. Excited to see it go forward.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Well, I hope this has been well received by you, and we certainly are excited about what you're doing and look forward to its implementation. So thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay. Right. The next topic is an update on the 2019 hard drive data breach. And I think Jason Balter is here. And Stephen, did you want to introduce this?
Yes. Basically, you sent out the spoiler in your chair's remarks, because we did present some of this information to legal women voters, and it was on our to-do list to provide an update to the board as well. The sequence was such that it ended up being presented to the league ahead of the board, but we just wanted to give a brief update. And I will share with you, we've been waiting on some data from our attorney who has worked with us on this. As you know, we have an insurance, a cybersecurity insurance policy. So an attorney hired by our insurance company has been the kind of lead person on this, not town council. And so we've been waiting on some updated information, but we wanted to just kind of give you a sense of where things are today. And Jason's here to kind of fill in as well. He was obviously not here when this incident occurred, but has, I think, as we presented previously, has been doing some work generally on our systems and our protocols as a result. So I guess just to kind of recap, it was in October of 2019, 108 hard drives went missing, where they were inappropriately removed from CPW. They were there in preparation for the swap-off, drop-off event. Concord Police launched an extensive criminal investigation and brought in outside forensic experts to help with that investigation. That investigation is still open at this point, but we have not, we did not locate the hard drives, and we do not have definitive proof that there has been a case of identity theft or anything associated directly with the hard drives. So one of the things that we had to do under state law under the law was determine, the population needs to be notified, and that and different states have different laws in terms of both notification and also the provision of credit monitoring, which is one of the things that when a data breach has occurred, the party that was subject to the breach has to offer credit monitoring to those who were affected by it. And I think we've all probably gotten a notice in the mail from some entity that we've worked with at some point in time, saying our data has been, we were subject to data breach and received kind of the standard letter that the town also sent out. If you haven't, consider yourself fortunate, because it's pretty widespread now. So one of the things that had to happen was because the hard drives were missing and they were not encrypted, we had to determine as best as we could, what was on them. And that really turned into basically backing up the computers for which we knew the hard drives had come from, because some of the hard drives had been taken out of machines that had been taken out of service. And so kind of going back and piecing together what machines did they come out of, and then doing backups of those current machines, and then having those backups, explored by a third party kind of forensic data company. And that has taken, months and months and months. It's a very complicated process, and it's taken a very long time. So the short of it is, and like I said, I wish I had this more specific data, but that's resulted in about 70,000 individual notifications in a large number of states, all across the country, for people who have for whose data we had for one reason or another. And so, and so the initial round that happened, I think I'd reported to the board a year or so ago, was to employees and retirees. And some of them did adopt the credit monitoring, not everyone has. And so this next round of notices will go out and the credit monitoring will be offered once again. And then we'll get data back on what the subscription rate was. And so it had a pretty wide-ranging impact, and a lot of staff time was taken trying to facilitate the piecing together of this list. We have to, under the law, you have to identify the impacted individuals, and that has taken up a lot of time and a lot of staff time as well. And then, of course, the third-party vendors that we've been working with, not only the data mining, but also the third-party call center who's been providing direct assistance to people who receive the notice. And so, we were fortunate that we had an insurance policy for this, because I think we had a deductible of about $5,000. But I think I can tell you that the cost to the insurance company is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars at this point, in terms of paying for the legal work and that, those third-party services that I just mentioned. So, it was a very unfortunate situation. I think that, it's just, we talked about it when it happened to most of you. Most of you were on the board. I think Matt was the only one who wasn't on the board at the time. We did talk about it, and it was unfortunate, but I think we've learned a lot from that incident. And Jason, I think you talk a little bit of some of the lessons learned and some of the changes that we made to improve on that, on how we treat or how we safeguard data.
Yeah, and huge thanks to Dave Wood taking over at the time to make changes immediately to take care of some things that we discovered. But as Stephen said, we had a lot of employee time. We needed to review the data with the police department before contacting these individuals, because depending on if it was an open investigation or if it was a person who had reported domestic abuse or something, we wanted to make sure that we weren't contacting people who shouldn't be notified of this breach. So that required a very detailed analysis of the data and took quite a long time. But we did make, as Stephen mentioned, a lot of changes to some processes, including encrypting all drives and making sure we had documented policies when decommissioning computers or replacing dead drives, sending out hardware to be replaced. But I will say also, in addition to this one incident, sometimes you can be a little blinded when you experience something pretty big like this, and you focus and overcorrect on just one thing. And so that's why when I gave my previous presentation to the board, I focused on the cybersecurity framework and having a holistic view of all security. But we definitely have taken a lot of steps to make sure that drives will not collect and not be unencrypted and not be available to the public or to be obtained improperly. So
that's about the extent of it. We just want to kind of give a brief update. So if anybody's any questions.
Okay.
So I just had a question, which was, is this the conclusion, or are there further steps to be taken?
I think we've taken all of the steps that need to be taken. I think we've kind of crossed all of the thresholds that have been identified as we've done, kind of peeled the onion on the data and identifying the impacted parties. I think that list is set. And like I said, I think it's just finalizing how many notices went out, how many used availed themselves of the credit monitoring, and what the total costs were. That's the data. That's the kind of, to me, that's the final thing is understanding that information a little better. But in terms of, is there more impact to discover? No, I think we've gotten to the bottom of the impact. Jason, if that, I mean, since
no, I'm just
Jason's been
wondering
working
if,
on it.
yeah, we have to continue to spend more staff time, or, you know, is there further steps to take? Yeah.
Jason, do you have anything further to comment on that item?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate the update. And I know this has been a rough chapter to go through for everyone. All right. I'm going to move on then next to the discussion of the warrant articles that were discussed at the May 6th public hearing. And these basically were on all the school budgets. So as we did last week, I think you have an updated list of the warrant articles to follow along. And as we did last week, the articles, we may be able to do we really need to do the budget amounts again if we can, just because they're, yeah. All right, Article 34, Community Preservation Committee appropriation recommendations. Are there any comments from the select board? Okay, otherwise I would entertain a motion.
I move affirmative action on Article 34, Community Preservation Committee appropriation recommendations in the amount of $1,769,891.
Second.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo.
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss.
Aye.
And myself, Ms. Biggs. Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous and the chair so declared. Article 27 is the Minuteman Regional Technical High School District budget. Any comments questions from the select board? Okay, if not.
Well, I think it's mainly looking forward to future years. I think we're going to need to look at this more closely than we have in the past. That there are certainly a number of structural issues, both the OPED liability as well as the plan to exceed the design size of the school and possible expansion costs that both will need, I think, careful monitoring. So it's less a case of this year's budget and more of making sure that, everything's going to be well taken care of in the future.
I can concur with your comments, Matt. All right. Any other comments on that? Okay, Susan, I would entertain a motion.
Move affirmative action on Article 27, Minuteman Regional Technical High School District budget in the amount of $1,289,284.
As the Concord assessment.
Yes.
Correct.
Concord
Correct.
assessment.
Yeah. All right, a second. Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo.
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman.
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
Okay, thank you. That's unanimous and the chair so declares. Article 28, the Concord Public Schools budget. I think this has been vetted in
Very thoroughly.
very thoroughly in numerous venues. All right, we'll entertain a motion.
Move affirmative action on Article 28, the Concord Public Schools budget in the amount of $41,708,424.
Okay, is there a second? Jane, second, thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss.
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman.
Aye.
Myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. The chair so declares. Article 29, the Concord Public Schools capital budget. Again, this has been well vetted. I would entertain a motion.
Move affirmative action on Article 29, Concord Public Schools capital. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page. As written in the warrant.
Okay, for $900,000. Okay, a second.
Yes.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous and the chair so declares. Thank you. Article 30, the Concord Carlisle Regional High School budget. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Move affirmative action on Article 30, Concord Carlisle Regional High School budget. Concord's assessment in the amount of $24,608,739.
Okay.
Dollars.
Okay, and there's a second. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Following that, the rule, I don't think we need any specific select board narratives to be presented on any of this. But I would like to comment that when we spoke last time and assigned the drafts and any drafts we will assign for this next group that we're going to hear this week, it would be helpful if those drafts are completed by the 19th and submitted to me. And then we will plan on briefly discussing those on the 24th.
So Linda, just to remind me, on the affordable housing, am I preparing that narrative at this
You
point?
are.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, thanks, because we did go around on that, and I just want to make
sure. No, you graciously.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, good. All right. All right. So I think we're ready for committee nominations.
Nominate Chief Financial Officer Carrie LaFleur to the Retirement Board for a term to begin on June 1, 2021, set to expire on April 30th, 2024.
Okay, and there are no appointments this week, so I think we're ready for committee liaison reports. Would like to go first? Susan.
Oh, I think Jane beat her to the.
Jane had her hand up.
Yeah.
I bow to you.
But, Jane.
Go ahead, Jane.
Okay.
We at least gave Susan her opportunity not to break her tradition. All right, Jane, thank you.
I just wanted to move this forward quickly. As most of you know, at the end of last week's meeting, there was a White Pond Association or White Pond Advisory Committee meeting at the same time. I thought that was very productive. I listened to the portion of it that I joined. And I think once again, it was a very useful effort by both Deputy Town Manager Kate Hodges, who's the project manager on this, and Stephen, to correct some of the factual misunderstandings. And I give us as much blame for this as anything else. There have been too many drafts of a plan circulating, and I think every time a new draft gets in circulation or there's still an old draft accessible, local members or local abutters and local White Pond residents get worried. And this is an area of great love, and they consistently have, described all of their concerns from the standpoint of safeguarding and stewarding the resource of White Pond. So I think, again, when this is all said and done, we're going to see a process that rivals perhaps the library sustainability plan in terms of outreach efforts and engagement. I'm sure that there will be more questions ongoing, but I just want to applaud everybody, including the White Pond Advisory Committee, for continuing to advocate and steward and voice the knowledge that they have that many of us don't, because we don't live on the pond. The next meeting I attended was the NRC, which was quite long. There were a number of issues. I mean, in the end, most of the NRC issues circle the concerns about the 50, 100, or 25-foot wetlands boundaries. And the NRC has been a wonderfully consistent body in reminding people that regardless of their good intents, encroaching on that is that's a letter of the law. And I'm always impressed by the goals that are brought forth in terms of renovations or projects by homeowners, and the consistency of the NRC in pointing out ways to perhaps achieve some of those goals without having crossed those lines. Then the final meeting, which I did miss, unfortunately, was the HDC. But the HDC at this point is in sort of quiet mode, and there was only one discussion point, and it was a new item on the agenda, which I'm sure we'll hear again. I'm hoping I get one more meeting of all my committees before I am leaving you all to your own devices.
Oh. All right, thank you, Jane. Terry.
Jane, you're not going to be gone totally as much as you think, because we're going to be calling on you for your words of wisdom, moral support, and lots of other stuff. So I know you're not going too far away, so that's great. I attended the PEG Access meeting covering for Matt this week. And they've asked me to announce that they're looking for 3 new people coming up. Any citizen with interest in communications and media would be most welcome to submit a green card. Also, some very exciting news from them. The video called "You Raise Me Up" that was made at CCHS has been nominated for 3 Emmy Awards, which is quite an honor. And this video was made of the high school choir. So congratulations to Debbie Smith, the choir director, and all the people from Concord, who are many, many people who worked to help produce it and do the cinematography for this great. I haven't seen it, but it sounds wonderful. I can't wait to see it. It's called "You Raise Me Up." And we should know within a couple of months whether we've won any of the 3 awards. The other really important thing that happened at this meeting is the PEG Access Board voted to support Article 41, which is that petition article about broadband. And there was a lot of discussion. And after hearing that discussion, I realized that the select board did not possibly have all the information when we took our position. And I'm going to request that we reconsider our position on Article 41 after tomorrow night, when we hear some more information at the Enterprise Fund public hearing. My understanding is, for example, there could be a possible amendment to come out that would suggest that the committee under this article be appointed by the select board. So I think that's something we need to pay attention to. Also, the ARPA funds that were mentioned at our meeting are a total of about 5 million that Concord is going to receive, which is fantastic. But that's for all the infrastructure things that we want to do in town. Whereas this one thing of providing the last mile to the last 5% of subscribers in Concord for broadband would cost at least 10 million, possibly up to 20 million. So there's a lot of information to think about, and I will be requesting at our next meeting after we hear from the public hearing. I will be requesting that we reconsider this article, our position. I also attended a joint meeting between West Concord Advisory Council and the West Concord Junction Cultural District, where they reviewed and accepted the preamble of the West Concord Building Design Guidelines, which is a big project they've both been working on for quite a while. They voted to approve and send those off to the planning board. And there will be a big event coming up this weekend. Is it this weekend? Yes, May 19th through 22nd in West Concord with a sidewalk sale, arts and crafts, presentation of the new farm mural, scavenger hunt, at each business. And it's called Spring into West Concord. It's again 4 days. They wanted to spread it out so that there's not crowds all on one day. So it's the 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd. And the West Concord Junction Cultural District will be looking for a new member in June. So please submit your green cards. And finally, I was able to attend this wonderful Concord Museum exhibit called Every Path Laid Open, which features historically a lot of well-known women in Concord and all the way up through current times. So it was a very good exhibit, and I encourage everyone to go.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, Terry, on your liaison report. I don't really understand yet how Article 41 will come up during the enterprise hearing. You know, I mean, that we're going to be discussing the enterprise articles.
Right.
How does this get discussed even?
Well, broadband is part of the CMLP, which is one of the budgets that's coming up to be discussed since CMLP is, I believe, an enterprise fund. Does that make sense?
I guess, but the merits of Article 41, I mean, we had the select board hearing. If someone was expecting to get input on Article 41, that was the place, right? I'm just not sure, relative, let's say, to public hearings, how tomorrow night's hearing bears on Article 41, really.
Well, it depends what comes up. And, just if I enter a motion to reconsider at our following meeting, it doesn't mean that a majority of this board is going to agree to reconsider. We may not hear enough to bother reconsidering, or maybe we will. So I guess we should see what happens tomorrow night.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Well, maybe I'll just follow right on with that with my liaison report, and we'll move Susan from first to last. First is, I guess I'll focus on the middle school building committee, since our board discussed that topic last week. And in addition to the chair's remarks earlier in this meeting, I just wanted to mention that the building committee voted, I think it was 14-2, to revise the space summary recommendation and move to schematic in order to move to schematic design. And The things that were revised were that the school administration has proposed removing the dedicated square footage for the maker space and alternate PE space, which saves some like $2.7 million of gross cost. And then we also looked at the gym space, and rather than two of the larger size courts that the CYBB had been proposing, it was just 74-foot length cross courts that can fit within the width prescribed by the single MIAA court. I think it will still achieve very close to their goals, but it's somewhat less. And then the auditorium, which up to the previous meeting had been proposed at various sizes, of 350, 467, 550. Anyway, the latest recommendation was 420 seats. And then finally, a request to the architects to seek opportunities to simplify the design in order to lower total project costs, because there's some elements of the design that could potentially be cost drivers. So I think that the net of this is, a plan that should be closer to the $100 million than to the 108, total project budget that was a not to exceed number. Hopefully it can get very close to 100 million, even with these changes. And we will see at our next meeting what the architects are able to come back with in terms of a proposed total project cost, and be able to move into the schematic design phase. So that was the middle school building committee. As far as the housing authority, Jennifer Polito was able to negotiate a executive director contract. So we're moving forward with her as the executive director, subject to the state's approval, and also that the engineers have completed the proposed site plan for a new house at the Commonwealth Ave, near the Giroux property. And they're going to be submitting a notice of intent to the NRC. But due to the proximity to the existing Giroux driveway, there continues to be a need to coordinate the construction, with the Giroux Park property. So there's been some outreach from the Housing Authority to Kate Hodges to try to make sure that that's going to continue to not hold up the affordable housing construction project. And then the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee is continuing to work on the Memorial Day celebrations. The tentative plan is, again, kind of great events, but ones in which the public is actually not invited, but that those who want to participate, that are veterans and the associations that support them, would be directly participating. And then the MAGIC meeting, the regional meeting, we reviewed the Metro Common recommendations. So there's a Metro Common 2050 plan that covers lots of urban planning, but we focused in on the housing component and strategies to create more affordable housing, and gave our feedback in detail on that area. There also is a potential regional FEMA preparedness initiative. So there, we may be able to coordinate with other towns and kind of develop, while the plans need to technically be individual town plans, they could have kind of the regional components where we have rivers that flow through all of our, communities and so forth, that have similar risks and concerns that could be addressed in a common way. So those were the main feedbacks from that.
Thank you, Matt. There's a question from the town manager, a comment?
Just a comment. I unfortunately, as you know, I'm a member of the middle school building committee. Unfortunately, I had to leave for collective bargaining session before that motion was made. But I would have wholeheartedly supported it, and I wanted to commend Matt. I did hear from other committee members after the meeting that you did a nice job distilling a complicated discussion into a motion that was, in fact, in writing at the time of the vote, which was, I think, a big step forward. So that was pretty well done.
Correct. Okay. All right. Susan.
Thank you. I just want to say to Matt and to the building committee that what happened at the last meeting is, demonstrates very well the iterative process that we go through for a lot of these things like White Pond. And it's really good to hear the results of that meeting. Thank you. I went to the planning board where the bulk of the meeting, there was a hearing on the Concord Children's Center proposal for 250 Old Bedford Road, which is at the corner of Old Bedford and Virginia Road. There were well over 100 participants at the meeting, and there were probably equally on each side, but the primary concern on the people that were opposed or concerned about it was traffic, because that's a busy intersection. There were also some concerns about drainage and the visuals of the mass of the structure, but there was an enormous amount of support for what the Children's Center has been and will continue to be in terms of the breadth of population that it serves that is not necessarily served by the other preschools in town. This hearing is going to be continued until June 4th. June 22nd, there will be a public forum on the MAPC proposed possibilities for the Thoreau Business District, and that'll be from 6:30 to 8:30. I attended the Concord Business Partnership meeting on the 5th in the morning, and the main topic of that meeting was the middle school. So it was a presentation that we're quite familiar with, and was information that we've heard before, but well done as usual. There were some questions about the cost of net zero, and this has been asked before, but it was pointed out that the cost of that is so embedded with the materials and the other aspects of the building, and it's really not possible to tease it out on its own. The cemetery committee met also on the 5th. And Brian Windmiller was a guest who talked about the Blandings turtles. And he mentioned that the Great Meadows population is one of the most critical in New England. And there are 50 turtles down from 115, but I'm not sure when the 115 number existed. And he stated poor survival rates. The turtles, it's 18 years for a little turtle to grow to an adult. So it's sort of like people. And they're working with Mass Wildlife to help protect the turtles. They hatch in August and September, but they are nesting starting soon. And you can see them moving from about 5:30 at night on. June is nesting time, it says. So there's a part of the cemetery where you can actually see this. They also discussed bicycles in the cemetery and they talked about a number of things, signage, wording of signage, and decided that a member of the cemetery committee is going to be a liaison to the Transportation Advisory Committee's bicycle subcommittee. They're also contracting with someone for maintenance of the Melvin Memorial. It's not, it's newly redone, but it's basically cleaning. I also, along with several others, went to the League of Women Voters open meeting law meeting, and also to the museum and echo what Terry said about the exhibit. It was there's also a great exhibit on April 19th, which had been an exhibit at the museum a number of years ago. And now there's a whole dedicated space for it, and it's terrific. And the last thing I want to talk about is a personal thing. The tradition has been for quite a while that the clerk of the select board moves up to the chair position. And I wanted to say that I have a number of health issues going on, nothing life-threatening, but requires a lot of time and some surgeries and, all kinds of stuff that I need to really attend to. And in order to do that, I don't feel like I have the breadth to do the proper job as chair of the select board. I don't think I have. I'll be too distracted to do what I consider to be adequate job. So I'm going to pass on that opportunity, but I'm going to stay on the board, and I'm not really worried because there were two of us elected, as you recall, in 2019. And I know that there are, Terry, I'll just put my bid in now. I think she'd be great. So, but that, as we learned at open meeting law meeting, that leadership is a public dialogue. So you can all tune in and see how that develops.
So thank you, Susan, for your report. And in terms of your last comment, I'm sure that was a difficult decision to make. And thank you for arriving at that and making that public at this time. So thank you. And we wish you well in whatever challenges you're going to be tackling. And if you're remaining on the board as a member, there's always a future opportunity. So stay tuned. All right. Let's see here. The next thing is, in terms of my reports, I attended many of the meetings that have already been spoken about this evening, so I'm going to move on. Miscellaneous correspondence. And I don't think we have any additional that was brought to my attention. Public comments. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay, if not, I would entertain, Jane?
It was occurring to me as Susan was speaking, and I want to really hand it to Susan because that is a hard decision, and I think it really validates the priority of Concord's service or service to Concord. And that's a hard one, and I appreciate the time you put into thinking about it. And, easy for me to say at the end of my 2 terms, but, we're all challenged with personal lives, professional lives, and select board time. And I think it's a big step to have the gumption to make a decision that doesn't follow a pattern. Now, speaking of pattern, and one thing I did want to bring up, and it's not on the agenda for tonight, so I'm not raising it as an issue, just putting it out there, is that with all of the discussions by the governor and a lot of the changes in behavior, I hope that I can see the select board move to at least a hybrid approach of meetings, because I know as a member this year, or actually throughout the COVID period, I've appreciated a lot of the leadership shown, but there's no replacement for in-person meetings. And I think that we would be very, very well served by starting to think about that.
Okay, thank you. And we certainly can talk about that more soon, I think. All right. Any other last comments here before I? Okay, I think we're ready to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Obviously, I hope there's a second.
Second.
All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss?
Aye.
And myself, Ms. Bates? Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
At all.